So welcome to everyone for joining us again for our next Mesilat Yesharim class. We are about to read chapter 19 together. We have been discussing the notion of chasidut or piety or being pious. And basically, pious means, just to summarize how he's explained it until now, is that it's when you do something actively, as opposed to prishut, which was separating yourself from things that are bad, right? And that then we said you're not only supposed to avoid things that are legally wrong, but you stay away from even things that are close to it. So chasidut is the flip side of that, where you're not just supposed to do the right thing, but you're supposed to do the right thing in the right way, and go above and beyond the letter of the law when it comes to what we're supposed to do. So today he's going to describe what exactly it includes, what the trait of piety includes. So the main divisions, the main subject matter within the topic of Chasidut there are three of them. Harishon b'maaseh. The first of the three is referring to our actions. Hasheni biofen ha'asiya. The second is regarding the way we do our actions. Hashlishi, and the third is bikavana. What is our intent when we do things? And all of these three things are necessary for the piety to be considered pious, right? So he's going to start with Achelik Harishon. The first division, the first category is Bamasa, in our actions. But in actions, there's also two Afhu Yischalek L'Shnei Chalakim. There's two different categories within the idea of action. The actions that we do when we do good deeds, there's two categories. What are they? Harishon B'Masha Bin Adam Lamakom. There's actions that we do that are between us and God. So when we go pray, when we go eat matzah on Pesach, when we go put a mezuzah on our door, when we go sit in a sukkah on Sukkot, or whatever, the things that we do that are not related to interpersonal relationships, or at least not directly, but they're related to doing things that God asked us to do. Masheni, and the second is b'masha ben adam lachavero, things that relate to the things that we do that relate to other people, when we do things towards other people. So first, Achelik Harishon, the first of the two that I mentioned, was Hubamasa Shemin Adam Lamakom, was referring to doing things that are between man and God. In Yano, and what the details of this are Kiyum Kol HaMitzvos, is to fulfill all of the mitzvos, all of the commandments of the Torah, B'chol HaDiktukim Bohem, with all of their details, right? Ad Makom Sheyad Amagas, as much as is possible, as much as reasonable for a human being to do. In other words, don't just randomly do it, but do it right, These are the things that our sages of blessed memory we would call the shiare mitzvah, the remnants, or the non-essential components, or the things that aren't, but doing it right, so if you have a menorah on Hanukkah, you don't just find a little corner with an old menorah, but you get a nice menorah and you get everybody together and you do it in a nice window, and it's more than what's technically required to fulfill the thing, but just doing it right, doing it in a nice way, doing it the right way, right? The amru shiare mitzvah ma'akiv v'mesa paranos. In order to get the protection of that a mitzvah provides us from suffering, is when we do the mitzvah right. It shows love for the mitzvah. It shows concern, and that you want to experience whatever lessons it is that this particular mitzvah is teaching you. You can sit down Pesach night, grab a piece of matzah, stuff it in your face, and then go to sleep, and you ate matzah, right? But if you sit down and you talk about what it's for and what you're doing and why you're doing it and why you have to eat a certain amount and how it's made and what's the meaning behind it, then you gain something from it. It means something for you. Even though the actual mitzvah itself can be complete, can be done, not can be completed, but can be done even without doing all the details, all of the extraneous details, and technically you fulfilled your obligation. This is for everyone. But someone who is pious, for those who are pious, they should fulfill them in their fullness, and not try to minimize and not try to get away with the minimal requirement. The second category, Sheba Rishon, the second subcategory within the first category. Remember, the first category was masa and actions, and he divided masa into two categories. The first one was between man and God, the things that we do to fulfill mitzvos that God gave us, and the second is between man and other human beings. So the second subcategory is b'masha bein adam l'chavero, is referring to those deeds that we do between man and his fellow. In Yano Godel Hahatava, and this pertains to the greatness of the good we do towards other people. We should always be involved in doing good for others as opposed to doing things that hurt other people. And this itself is three more subcategories. They refer to beguf, what we do with our bodies, b'mamon, what we do with our money and our property, uvenefesh, and what we do with our hearts and our souls. And this is an interesting way to look at how we relate to other people and how every aspect of who we are, both with our actions and with the things that we own, our resources, and with our soul itself. And you'll understand as he discusses each one separately. Beguf, when I'm talking about with our bodies, always be available to help other people to the extent that you're able to do so. And lighten the burden from them. So in the most literal sense, if a person's carrying a big bag and it's really heavy, you offer to hold some of it, right? But obviously that's the simple sense, but people are carrying all sorts of burdens. They're carrying all sorts of trouble, and you offer with your body to do something. Tell them, you know what? You have 10 tasks to do. Just let me have one or two. So just to make your life a little bit easier. And you go and do them a favor, and you do it for them with your body, with your actions. And this is what we learn. You should carry the yoke together with your friend. He's translating this as a reference to literally carrying his yoke or her yoke, right? And if somebody is hurt, if they're damaged in some way, and you're able to do something to prevent them from getting hurt or from getting hurt worse, or do something to lighten their burden. They have a broken leg and you can help, you know what, I'll walk to the store for you, I'll drive you over there. So you should go out of your way in order to do that. So that's beguf, with your body, with your physical actions. But then there's also b'mamon, with your belongings, with your money. To help a person as much as you can afford, and prevent damage from happening to him as much as you're able. If you find out that someone can't pay their electric bill and damage is going to happen, they're going to be cold in the winter or too hot in the summer, you help them pay what they need to pay. Certainly that you will do as much as you can to prevent other people from getting harmed and damaged. Even if right now you don't see the damage happening, right now he has a house, right now his air conditioning is running and he's not, but he's in a situation, a monetary situation, which is very tenuous, and you can help them out. It's possible that he can go down that path. You can help him now and help get him out. You can get him trained for a job. You can so on, whatever. Yesharim v'yavirim v'yamru zuchonim l'bracha yimamon chavercha chavev alecha kishalcha. The property and belongings of others should be beloved to you, just like the property of yourself. In other words, you have to recognize that other people need that their finances to be something they can live on, just like you do. So helping them with your resources, that's the second category. The third category is benefesh, in your soul. And here is really talking about what you do, the way you talk to people, the way you act towards them, the way you smile, the way you treat them with your heart, right? Bring to your friend whatever satisfaction or pleasure that person that you can, right? Whether it's simply in matters of honor, telling a person you did a good job, telling a person, I appreciate the efforts that you made. You made a really nice meal, or you built a really nice thing. Give them the honor that they crave. To help them feel good. Bein b'shar chalenim, or in any kind of thing. Kol mashu yodea. Anytime you know, and if you know a person well enough, that if you would do this for your friend, he would be pleased by it. It would bring him or her some pleasure. Mitzvahs chasidus ulasoso. Then it is a act of piety to do it. In other words, there is no mitzvah in the Torah that says you need to run around and tell everybody how great they are, right? But you know and you understand. If you talk to people in a nice way, you can do that. So that's piety. That's going above and beyond in order to fulfill the Torah, not just the strict requirements, but more than that. Kol shekain, and certainly it would be obvious that you should avoid at all costs bringing pain to other people in any way, in any way. And the general rule of all this is the mitzvah that we're familiar with as the name of Gemilut Chasadim, which is to give to favors, to do kindness to others. That our sages, may their memory be blessed, were praised it so much, with so much praise, and how obligated we are to do this. And included in this, who redifas hashalom, is pursuing peace, is doing things that help bring peace between you and others, and between others and others. Shahu ha'tava ha'klalis, that is the most important, that is the most all-inclusive kindness that one can do between all human beings and all other human beings. So he divided this up into several categories. Number one, remember, there's the actions, there's how you do it, and what you have in mind, your intent. And then he said, and the actions he divided into two: actions between man and God, actions between man and human being. And then when he talked about actions between man and God, he had one subcategory. Between man and human being, he divided that into three more subcategories, right? Beguf, what we do with our body; b'mamon, what we do with our belongings; and b'nefesh, what we do with our heart and our soul. So now he's going to bring proofs to this. So I'm going to bring you all kinds of proofs about these things from words from the sages. May their memory be blessed. Even though they're obvious, they're simple, they're obvious. I don't really need to bring proofs for the points I just made, but I'm going to bring you proofs anyway. And this is interesting because this is the first time I think I've seen him in this book, if someone could correct me if I'm wrong, where he says something like this. Like usually he brings a proof that he feels is important here, to make his point. Here he's saying, my point is already made and it's obvious and you know it, but I'm going to bring you proofs anyway. Why he does that here, clearly it's something that he believes is so important for us to know, that he doesn't want you to, he wants you to see just how important this is to Chazal and how important this is in the Torah. So, Perak B'nei Ha'ir Amru, in Perak B'nei Ha'ir, that is in the tractate Megillah, right? So it says, Shalu Talmidav es Rabbi Zakkai. His students asked Rabbi Zakkai, B'meha rachiyamim, on what merit did you merit this wonderful zechus, this wonderful merit that you lived for such a long time? So Amar Lahem, he said to them, Miyomai, in all of my days, lo hishtanti betoch arba amos shel tvila. I never urinated in a place where I prayed. V'lo kinisi shem l'chaveri. In other words, I prayer was so important to me. Nowadays, we all have bathrooms. They didn't have bathrooms then. So he's saying I made the place where I prayed into a holy place. Number two, lo kinisi shem l'chaveri. I had so much respect for my friends that I never even gave them a nickname. because a nickname carries a certain level of levity, a certain level of not taking the person seriously. I always called them by their real name. V'lo bitalti kiddush hayom, and I had never missed kiddush on Shabbos, right? Ima zakeni haisali, right? I had once an elder, when my mother was really old. Pam achas, one time, machar kippah shebarosha, she sold her head covering v'vila kiddush hayom in order to buy wine for kiddush. So harelucha po min hachasida. So we see here the idea. None of these things are requirements of law, right? But they're all piety above the requirements. Presumably, he was much more nice to his friends than just not calling them nicknames. Presumably, he also did all the basic stuff: giving charity, doing favors, visiting the sick, so on and so forth. But he went above and beyond that. Everybody prays, but he was especially careful to do it in a holy way. So, the truth is, if you don't have money for kiddush, right, then he didn't have the money, right? There's no obligation to sell your only head covering, your only hat. If you can't afford the wine, you can't afford the wine. That's above and beyond the law, right? So I'm sorry. So but he did it because Mimidas Chasidus. It was so important to him. It was so beautiful to him that he wanted to make sure to do it right. When it comes to the honor of one friend, when it says I didn't give him a nickname, it doesn't mean just a bad nickname. Like it's not that I didn't call my friends Dodo Brain, right? That's one thing. But he was even a kinus that's not Shulganai. Even his name is Joe, and I didn't call him Joey, right? Which isn't a Ganai. It's not a denigrating name. But there's a little bit of lack of respect when you do that, and I respected everyone. So like Tosfos explains over there, Rav Huna gamkein kashar gemi al lavusho. And we see Rav Huna would tie a rope around his clothing, right? Lefisha machar hemyano, because he sold his belt in order to buy wine for Kiddush. Odsham, we also see other stories there. Shalu Talmid of Rabbi Elazar ben Shamua, where the students of Rabbi Elazar ben Shamua asked him, on merit of what special thing did you merit having long life? So Amalemi said, right? I'd never made a shortcut out of the shul, right? So in other words, I always respected the place of the shul, and instead of like, if I needed to go from point A to point B and there was the shul in the middle, I didn't walk through it, I walked around it, right? So v'lo pasati al Rosh Am Kodesh. Now remember, in those days, people sat on the floor, right? Most of the time. So when he was walking into the base madrasa or into the shul, right? People would step over the other people on the floor until they found a place to sit. But he never stepped over them. He walked around them. It's a similar pattern to before. Is there any law against stepping over somebody? No. But he did it out of respect for the other people and not to have your dirty shoes over other people's heads or or maybe accidentally kick somebody or who knows what. So he always made sure to walk around. We find an issue of piety when it comes to honoring the place of the shul, right? A place of prayer, and also honor of human beings, of people. So again, we see these categories: things between man and God, and between man and his friend. Not to step over people who are gathered, which would look kind of like you're denigrating them, like you're above them somehow. Odsham, we see further stories. Shalu Talmidav Rabbi Preda. The students asked Rabbi Preda, and what honor did you get to live a long life? So Amalemi said, Miyama, in all my days, lo kidamani adam leveis hamedrash. Nobody beat me to the study hall. I was always the first one there. V'lo beirachti lifnei kohen. I never said, I always respected the honor of the kohen, of the priest, right? I never made the blessing before him. V'lo achalti mi behema shelo hurma matnosean. I never ate from an animal who her first, the portions that are due to the Kohen weren't given first. V'yamarod, they said, furthermore, Shalom Tamidavas Rabbi Nechunya. They asked Rabbi Nechunya, B'meherach Dayamim, what zuchus did you live long? Amalem, he said, Miyamai lo niskabadati beklon chaverai. I never attained any honor at the expense of my friend, right? I never achieved my position because I put someone else down. V'lo also al mitasi kilas chaverai. And I never went to bed while I was still in an argument with someone else, right? When someone else cursed me or was angry at me, I made sure before I went to sleep, I made sure to resolve the disagreement. And it explains, right? Where Rav Huna was carrying, it explains a story there. It says a story where Rav Huna was walking with a mara is a shovel, right? And he had a shovel slung over his shoulder. He must have been doing work in his yard, and he had a shovel. So Asa Rav Chana Bar Chaniloi v'kadari minei. And Rav Chana Bar Chaniloi came and said, and offered to carry the shovel for him. Maybe he was old, maybe he had carrying a lot of other stuff. So he said, I'll take the shovel. So Amrle, and he said, now in certain places, walking around with the shovel over your shoulder is somewhat denigrating, right? An honorable rabbi wouldn't walk around the street with a shovel on his shoulder. In other towns, maybe everybody's farmers, and walking around with the shovel on your shoulder is kind of what everybody does. So Rav Huna said to him, if you're the kind of guy that always walks around with a shovel and it wouldn't be denigrating to you, fine, go ahead. I'll let you take the shovel off my back. But if not, I don't want to benefit by not having to carry the shovel, by you having to go be denigrated by walking in the street with a shovel, because it'll be a little bit embarrassing, right? And I don't want to benefit from your embarrassment. So we see, right? When we usually think, right, about having honor from someone else's disrespect, from someone else's shame, we usually think of a bully standing with a bunch of people, and the bully makes fun of a kid, right? And then everyone thinks the bully is great, and they look at the kid and they laugh at him. That's the image we often have in our head, or something similar to that, right? Where one person is gaining honor in front of others at the expense of someone. But that's not always the case. Sometimes it's a lot more subtle than that, right? But for a pious person, lo yos kabo chavod, it's more, I don't even want to get any form of honor. Even if the friend is coming, I want to carry the shovel for you. If in any way, shape, or form, through me, someone else will have even a tiny little bit of shame, even if that shame is something that he asked for. And similarly, Rabbi Zera says, I never became angry at home. I never got angry at my wife. I never got angry at my kids. My whole life, I was never angry. How many of us can say that their entire life they never got angry at home? That's pretty impressive. I never walked ahead of someone who's greater than me. I always respected people that were older than me, wiser than me, right? I always, walked a little behind. I never studied Torah or even thought about Torah when I was walking in the places where people do, like, go to the bathroom and stuff like that. Again, it's a mix of things between man and God, and a mix between things, man and friends. I never walked for 4 amos. That's approximately somewhere between 8 and 10 feet. Between 6 and 10 feet, depending on how big a cubit is. But the bottom line is, I never went without Torah, without learning of below tefillin, and without wearing my tefillin. But remember, in those days, they wore tefillin all the time, not just at davening like we do today. I never fell asleep in the study hall. And there's no law against, dozing off every once in a while, but I never did. I was never happy from someone else's mistake. And that's key. I never felt that was how I was never, even if that him making a mistake somehow elevated my status in the group, I never was happy about such a thing. Velo karasi lachaver b'chachi naso. And again, I never called a friend of mine by a nickname. I always called him by his proper name. These are examples of acts of piety that are above and beyond the strict letter of the law, but it gives you a sense for how important it is not just to not get up and actively embarrass someone, but to be so concerned about their feelings that you're not even if he had nothing to do with it, you don't smile when someone else has a downfall. It said even further, Rav Yehuda says, Man de boy lemeheve chasida l'kayem mile de brachos. If someone wants to be pious, he should be involved, and he should in fulfilling the idea behind brachos, making proper blessings. And that's referring to the things that we do between us and God, right? So be careful to make the proper blessing. It's interesting that that's between us and God, but it has a little bit of between us and chaver type aspect, because the issue of making a blessing is thanking God. It's thanking someone else. Now, this one is the capital O one and not the small o one, but it still has kind of an aspect of between us and some other being, right? And some say that he should be careful, especially in areas of damaging other people. And there, and this is him referring to the other aspect of piety when it comes to treating other human beings. And some say you should be careful in doing the things that are mentioned in the tractate of Mishnah called Masechet Avot. Literally means the tractate of the fathers, but it refers to the lessons and teachings that are taught in Avos, which is a mix of both how we worship and treat God, and how we treat other human beings. There, it's all included. V'hine, and behold, Gemilos chasadim hu ikar gadol chasid. The idea of doing kindness to others is something that is a very important idea, very important principle. The ikar is a principle, all right, to a person who is pious. Ki chasidus atzmo, the word chasidut, which is the Hebrew word for piety, comes from the word chesed, from the word kindness. It's the same root. To be pious is to be kind. So when we think about piety, and when we use the English word, kindness isn't the first thing that comes to mind. We think about a guy in some form of religious garb, usually maybe chanting in a synagogue or some form of house of worship, depending on which religion he's pious in, right? That's the first image, at least, that comes to my mind. But if you think about the word in Hebrew and you think about chasidut, the first thing that should come to mind is chesed, kindness. And the rabbi said there are three things the world stands upon. And one of those three things that the world that's necessary to keep the world going is gemilot chasadim, is doing loving kindness to others. And it was also the rabbis counted it im hadvarim, together with the things that one eats its fruits in this world. In other words, the kindness that we do to others, we eat its fruits, right? When we're kind to others, we're more likely to get kindness from others, and the benefits accrue to us in our own lives. And most of us see this all the time. When we're kind to others, we get kindness in return. But the real reward, the karen, the principle, that is in the world to come. The Torah begins with an act of kindness, and it ends with an act of kindness. It also says, Rava expounded the following verse, the following idea. Anyone that has these three midos, these three traits, it is clearly obvious that he is a descendant, whether it's a spiritual descendant or a physical descendant of our forefather Abraham. Rahman, a person who is merciful. Baishan, he has a sense of shame. V'gomel chasadim, he's a person that does kindness to others. They also said, Doing acts of kindness to others is more important than giving charity. It's more important than writing a check to your favorite charity. So don't think you get away with doing kindness by writing a check. Shenemar, because it said zero, but getting actually involved in acts of kindness is more important. Shenemar, as it says, ziru lachem tzedakah, you should plant or sow lachem tzedakah kitzur lepi chesed. With charity you sow and you reap by doing chesed. In other words, the real benefit comes from kindness. There's 3 things in which gemilas chesed is better than charity. Charity is with your money, is with your property, which is good, it's important. But gemilas chesed begufa, that's with your actual body. You're actually doing something kind to someone else, for someone else. Tzedakah la'aniyim, charity is generally for poor people. But doing kindness isn't necessarily only for poor people. You can be kind to everybody, right? You can be kind to rich people too. Anyone. People need kindness, people need favors, and you do it for anyone. Tzedakah l'chaim, and charity, you can only give live people. You can write 1,000 checks. If a guy's dead, he's dead. The check's not going to do for him anything. But gemilas chesed, doing kindness, you can do kindness for people that are alive or dead. You can say nice things about people that are not with us anymore. They might not be here to feel it, but you're still being kind to them. You can take care of more directly, make sure they have a respectful burial and they have a respectful funeral and so on. So kindness is even for people that are no longer with us. The Amrod, they furthermore said, God will give you mercy and then he will have mercy upon you. Kol hamerachem ala brios. And from this we learn, the Chazal teach us, the rabbis teach us, that anyone that has mercy on human beings, on other people, actually brios doesn't mean human beings, it means all of creations. That when the Chazal use the term briot, it means creations, it means humans, animals, anything that's created, right? If you have mercy on that, merachimim alav min hashamayim, then they have mercy on you from heaven. It is simple. We know that God measure for measure. He honors, he either punishes or rewards appropriately to our actions, right? So if you're a merciful person and you're kind with other human beings and other people and other creations, so God in his justice will have mercy on you, and he will forgive you your sins, right? Because this is justice, right? In other words, sometimes you might think, well, if God is just, so you do something wrong, right? Then how is it that if I act kind to others, he'll forgive my sins? He's just. I did a sin, I should get punished for it. No, but the point is, if somebody does something bad to you, but you're kind to them anyway, right? Then it's just for God to treat you the same way, right? That even though you might have done something bad, he'll be kind to you anyway, right? Because that's how you act towards others. And you don't just say, oh, he was a jerk yesterday, I'm not going to do anything for him. But no, you don't. You treat everyone with kindness, and then God treats you the same. To whom does God carry overlook transgressions? Lemisha over al pesha, a person who is over al pesha, a person who overlooks when people are negligent towards him or her. But if you're a kind of person that's always strict and you never want to be forgiving of anyone else, you never want to do anybody any favors. You say, oh, why should I give any charity? They could go work for a living too. Let them get a job, right? I'm not going to go give him any money. He can, I worked hard for this. Why should I give it to him? That kind of attitude, right? So fine. So then God will do the same thing for you, right? God's going to look for you very exacting. Do you deserve it? So what are you asking me for? What did you do to get what you're asking? You're asking for this thing, that thing? Sorry, but it's not happening, right? Re'ei ata, you should know, you should think now and see now. Mi hu zevi ezahu. Those are from Megillas Esther. Remember that term, but it's a power. What kind of person and which kind of person could this be, or which person is this, right? It's Esther's way of saying, who is that guy? I'm sorry. It was Achashverosh's way of saying to Esther, who could possibly be the one who's trying to harm your people, right? But he uses that same language here just to emphasize what kind of a person could it possibly be, Sheyuchal Lamod, who can stand before God, right? Right. If God's going to treat you exactly what you deserve. How many of us can stand before God and honestly say, this is what I really deserve? Not too many of us. Most of us have our faults, and most of us will have a hard time justifying ourselves. David HaMelech mispal b'yomer, and King David prayed and said, "V'al tavo b'mishpat es avdecha." Don't come in with harsh justice. Ki lo yitztak lefanecha kol chai. There isn't any living creature that can be completely justified in front of you. We've all made mistakes. We've all fallen into traps. We've all done things we shouldn't have done, and therefore we should be forgiving of others if we expect God to be forgiving of us. Omnam, however, ha'osa chesed, a person that does kindness, yikabel chesed, he will receive kindness in return. Ukechol ma sheyarbe lasos kach yarbe lekabel, and the more he does, the more he gets back. V'davar ha'yimesala b'midaso zos hatova, and David himself, who we just quoted, was praised for this good trait of his. If he tried to do good, even to those who hated him. Most famously, of course, with King Saul, right? With Shaul HaMelech, Zeu Masha Amar, V'ani b'chalosam levushi sak, inesi betzom nafshi, right? V'omer im gamalti shol mira, if I have done, paid back people that did evil to me, v'achalta tori rekam. Indeed, I have rescued those who hated me without cause. In other words, David was saying that he had done kindness to those, even those that weren't good to him. And included in this, in case you didn't get the point where he specifically, Chazal chose the term beriot, which means creations, as opposed to l'chol adam, human beings. He's emphasizing that he used that term, and Rava used that term in the Gemara for a specific reason. One should not cause pain to any creature, even any non-human creature, and to have mercy on them, and to have compassion towards them. And so it says, a true tzaddik, a true righteous person, knows and understands the needs and desires of his animal, right? In other words, he doesn't just give him food, but he knows the things that his animal needs and requires in order for the animal to be happy. There are those that hold that tsar balei deoraisa, that it's a Torah law that one is not allowed to cause harm to or pain to any living creature. And even if you disagree with that opinion, certainly the Rabbanan, it's certainly a decree of the rabbis that we're not allowed to cause any harm to animals. Klolo shel davar, the general rule is harachmanos, that mercy, v'hatava, and being kind and doing good to others, tzarach shetiyah tekua b'levachas, it has to be completely fixed and completely ingrained in the heart of a pious person, la'olam, forever. So this is what piety means. V'tiyah megamaso tamid lasos koras ruach labrios, and a person's goal, his goal, the goal of a pious person is to always be doing nice things for others and making other people feel at peace, making other people feel content, below ligrom lem shumsar, and never to cause any pain to other creatures. So so this was his discussion of the first part, which was in masa, right, in our actions, right, and he divided into actions between us and God, actions between us and human beings, and then he divided the actions between us and human beings into guf, what we do with our bodies, what we do with our money, and what we do with our souls, how we help people through our words, and so on. But now he's going to go on to ofen asiya, to the way we do things. It's not just what we do. It's not just being kind or taking the shovel off the other guy's shoulder, but it's how we take the shovel off the other guy's shoulder. But before we do this, I think it's a good stopping point for comments. If anyone has anything they want to add, subtract, or whatever.
I do, but
Okay.
I think that I prefer that it will be off record because there's some stuff that.
All right, I'll have a chance for off the air. Did I record this? Oh no, I have been recording it. Okay. For a second, I
Yes.
thought I.
So you can pause it, or I can do it at the end.
Yeah, we'll wait till the end then. Yeah,
Okay.
just hold it, and then
Thank
we'll
you.
wait till
Yeah.
the end. Is anyone have something they don't mind being recorded on the air?
Well, I think it's interesting how these proofs, like these
Right.
proofs that he's bringing forward, are words from the sages. I don't know. I think that's just interesting for me, maybe not having an Orthodox background. They're just words. I mean, like, I guess they're saying, sort of in some ways too, it sounds like they're bragging. I mean, the one Rabbi Zera said, "Never in my life have I been impatient with my household, nor have I walked ahead of one greater than myself, nor have I meditated on the Torah." I mean, I just feel like that's probably not even true. I mean, was he really that saintly?
Well, it's an interesting question because I'll give you another. There's a famous dictum where Rabbi Yosef, a different sage from the Talmud, says someone had said when so and so passed away generations ago, hasn't been any person as humble as him. And Rabbi Yosef said, "Don't say that because I'm still here." Right? And it's a famous thing. Like, it's kind of ironic and funny because, like, you don't announce that you're humble, right? But on a certain level, if a person is standing in a room and has the guts to say something like that, right, then depending on the circumstance, I mean, the people in the room knew whether he was lying or whether it was real, right? And I'm not gonna. If certain people, if they get up there and say, "I'm the most humble person around," that people are not going to realize that he's full of what. But then some people can. And in the rabbis in general, in these statements, you have the context is important. They're elderly, right? They're old. They have their students gathered around them, and they're being asked, "Why have you lived so long?" So you have to have the image of an older person who has his students gathered around, an old sage, and they want to ask him, and near the end of his life, he's saying, these are the things that I really worked on in my life. Mm-hmm. So if you put it in context, it's not a rabbi standing up in front of a congregation announcing all the wonderful things that he did, because that would obviously go over pretty bad in most circumstances. Right, but in the setting that the Talmud gives of the story, where you have an elderly man who lived a long time and his students are gathered around, it's a very different kind of context. Mm-hmm. So then he tells his students, and then the students are asking him, "Rabbi, teach us, why did you have such a good life?" And he comes back and he says, "Well, I'll tell you the things that I focused on, or examples. I mean, these aren't obviously the only things, but examples of the kinds of things that I focus on. Like, this is what I want you to take into your lives and to teach your students." So I think the context changes it.
Yeah, it does. I almost wonder, though, since he even said, even though these things are evident and do not require the supportive proofs, I almost wonder if it's necessary to even, include it. So, like, he could have just omitted all the examples and just moved on.
So what does everyone think? Like, what do you think? Because I don't know if I have a good understanding, because it's not his usual pattern of doing this. Like, this is the only place I know of where he says, "I don't really need to give you these proofs. I'm going to give you a whole bunch of quotes from all over the Talmud, all over the Mishnah, that back up what I'm saying." Like, why do you think he needed to do that? Like, I think he's trying to drive the point home. Do you think he succeeded, or did he not succeed? Was it necessary? Was it not necessary?
I just think that it sort of comes off as bragging, because I don't have the context of an elderly man, explaining to his students. I don't, but maybe other people do when they read it. So they read it in that proper context. But to me, they're not really proofs. They're just sources of people that basically are saying the same thing as him. So to me, that's not a proof. An example, a concrete example. I mean, I guess, like,
what
not
about
walking
the story
over.
Of the shovel?
Yeah, that's a concrete example.
He died before he was 40, so we're not talking about old men.
I mean, the writer of the book itself.
Yeah, Ramchal died before he was 40, so if he's quoting, it's just to say, these are good ideas, but not.
Yeah, I have a question.
Okay.
It's as you pointed out, the chapter in Hebrew is Chasidus, which you were
Right.
saying the root word is kindness. Why don't they title this chapter, the English translator 19, say aspects of kindliness? Saintliness is such a Christian connotation. I'm just wondering, what are they trying to accomplish here by
Well, I
calling
have piety. What
saintliness?
do you have? Is the name of the chapter.
I don't have a title. I never have chapter titles. It just calls it. There are 3 primary divisions of piety.
So you have piety.
Oh, fine.
Yeah, piety. So which translation do you have?
Well, this is the one, I think the one, Mordecai Kaplan.
So you have the Kaplan one too. He doesn't use piety. He calls
No,
it.
not in this English. It says.
I have Steve.
Oh, yours is Siva. Oh, so you're the only one that has the Kaplan here today. Oh, because the Billy usually has the Kaplan one.
Yeah.
But she's not here today. Okay.
Okay.
So
translation, but Kaplan, I mean, he's pretty. I mean, saintliness seems to be not. He should use kindliness or something. Not given.
Well, I'm kind of. I don't think kindliness would be a good translation. I think piety is the best English translation that I could think of.
But not saintliness.
But I wouldn't have chosen saintliness. I would give Kaplan a little credit. He was writing, I think, in the 1920s.
Okay.
So maybe back then saintliness didn't mean the same thing as it means to us today. But if I was writing my own translation, I would choose piety too. Because I wouldn't choose kindness because the Ramchal is making the point that they both have the same Hebrew root, but they're not the same word. Gemilut Chasadim is not the same thing as Chasidut when in reference to, because you wouldn't use, for example, the chesed, the Chasidut that refers to Ben Adam Lamakum, between us and God. Let's say you're a chassid and you do a mitzvah properly. That has nothing to do with other people. You light your menorah, you buy a nice big menorah, whatever, the example I gave before, whatever, right? That has no kindness aspect to it, or at least it's certainly not a, So I don't think kindliness would have been a good translation. But he was just pointing out that remember that the word has the same root, so just remember that.
Yeah.
Any other comments before we go on? So if not, okay, so then we're going to go on and this is actually pretty long, so I'm not sure whether I should start. Maybe I'll start a little. But
there's an echo there. Is there a way for the recording?
I'm sorry. Is it better now?
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah, I had put the microphone so we can hear Deanna talking. All right. So all right. Well, the next subject, I'll just start a little bit, and if we do it again next time, it's fine too. The second portion of Chasidut is u'ba'ofen asiyan, is how we do things, right? Not just doing over and above what's required, but how we do things when we do them. This also has 2 basic categories here, general categories. However, within each of the categories, there's many, many details. So first, what are these 2 categories? The 2 primary categories, hayira v'ha'ava. Now, these are generally translated as fear of God and love of God. Okay, yira and ava. And I've argued, if anyone has been with me in the Maimonidean, my classes and the Kuzari classes and other things, I generally tend to veer away from translating yira as fear, and I generally translated it as awe of God. There's a very big difference between fear and awe. And I think that awe is a much, much, much better translation of the Hebrew than fear. But fear actually in Hebrew would be the Hebrew word pachad, which is a different word than yira. And pachad, might have its place, but pachad is the kind of fear one has when you're alone on a trail in the woods and a grizzly bear is coming after you. That's pachad, right? Yira is awe of God that one feels when one's standing out in the field and looks up in the sky and sees how vast and how incredible God's world is, and you feel small and you're in awe of the creator of the universe. 2 very different feelings. So anyway, so there's yira and ava. There's awe and there's love. And the love being the love that one feels when one appreciates what we have in this world to appreciate, all of the things that are beautiful and when we attribute it to the Creator and we feel love for the for the one who gave us the opportunity to experience this life that we have. So Shnei Amudei Ha'avodah Ha'mitis, right? Shezulasim Latikon Klal. These are the two true pillars of true worship, of true service of God. Without these two, Yira and Ava, you would be nowhere. So this is the first time that the Mesilat Yesharim is discussing these two main motivators for service of God, and he specifically chooses them. And we need these two emotions, these two feelings, these two ideas in order to achieve chasidut, right? In other words, pachad, right, the fear of punishment or the desire for reward, right, could explain much the behavior of someone who does everything up to the level of chasidut, up to the level of piety, right? A person might want to do all these mitzvot or do nice things because he or she wants to gain stuff. You might avoid doing bad things because you're afraid of being punished or losing stuff, right? But in order to be pious, you need to have another motivator, right? It has to, and what's those motivators? Well, Yira and Ava are the two parallel motivators. And how do they work? How does Yira drive us in that direction? And how does Ava drive us in the direction? And I'm going to tell you, and he's going to explain right away. I'm just going to read this and then I'm going to stop, right? Hine Ikar HaYira, the primary the main point of Yira is Yiras Haromumas, is fear of his greatness. In other words, awe. I'm sorry, I keep slipping into fear because the translation keeps throwing the word fear at me, but it's a bad translation. It's awe of his grandeur, right? Of not just his, but awe of grandeur in general. The feeling that one gets when you're standing next to a skyscraper, right? It's just the feeling that one gets when you're standing in a park and you look and you see these vast mountains or fields or the ocean or anything beautiful that just inspires you with just how tremendously awe-inspiring it is. That a person has to think when he's doing a mitzvah, right? You have to be thinking about this awe, right? If that's what's motivating you, right? Awe of God and the creation that you're in, and how it motivates you. We're going to get a lot into this detail next time we learn, but I'm going to continue. We'll continue and we'll get into how awe will on one end and love on the other end, and ava in this connotation really doesn't even mean love. It means much more inspiration. So the awe and inspiration, those two motivators, can inspire us to the higher level of service of God, the level of chasidut, the level of piety, and that's what we're going to work on next time. So if there's others comments that on the air, now's your opportunity before I turn off the recording.
I would just add that I study with one of Rabbi Steinfeld's prize students, Benjamin Zimmerman, and he feels you should use fear. I haven't had discussions with him in my classes because he feels that without fear, you're not communicating the emotional reaction that you have in the presence of Hashem. That awe decreases the emotional excitement or the emotional content that you should fear God because of his power, and it touches it touches a very sensitive point, awe or fear, and he feels, for him at least, he wants fear to be the component.
Well, the Tehillim does say, Ashrei Adam Mefachei Tamid. Praise is the person who is constantly afraid. But exactly. So, but I can't say that I disagree with him without having heard all of the nuance and the context within which he said it. But on the surface level, I would disagree, right? In other words, but it could very well be that if I heard the context within which he said that I would agree with it.
I think it goes deeper. It's not an intellectual thing that you can argue about in that fashion. I think it touches very deeply into relationships.
Yeah. Well, but here the Mesilat Yesharim, the Ramchal, immediately went straight to awe, right? He immediately made it.
The English translation here is not awe; it's reverence.
A reverence is good. That's a good one. I like that one.
Reverence.
So I'll give Kaplan credit for that one, right? But that's a good one. But it's the same thing. It's not a fear like the kind of fear one has when you're being chased by a grizzly, right? It's a different kind. It's an awe of greatness, right? And Mesilat Yesharim made it clear right away to tell us what he means here by Yira. But we'll talk more. But next week we'll have a lot bigger discussion.
2 weeks, right?
2 weeks. I'm sorry. Next time. Next time is what I meant. Any other comments? If not, Yosef, you have to be ready. I'm going to turn off the recording.
I'm going to hang up. Thanks.
Before I turn the recording off, thank you very much to everyone for being here together, joining us, whether you're with us now or whether you're listening to a recording or watching it. Looking forward to next time.